we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between loneliness and being alone. Ever since I can remember, I've actually been okay with being alone. I have no problem doing things by myself. I had no problem playing video games, watching movies, even as a kid, doing things by myself, going out by myself for a bike ride or things like that. And even as an adult, I have gone to movies by myself. I go to vacation by myself. I'll go out for drives. That's one of the things I like to do, is just to jump in the car and go for a drive if there's not much going on, and go out to some of the nicer areas of our state and just drive around and go walk around. No problem doing that by myself. And that's being okay being alone. That's different than loneliness. Loneliness is that feeling where we kind of crave, where we want other people around. We crave that we haven't had a lot of social interaction. One of the things I think that is a distinction between being alone and being okay with being alone and loneliness is when I'm alone and I'm okay with that, I'm peaceful, I'm joyful, no problem, everything is calm. In my heart, in my mind, everything is good. I have loneliness going on. I'm not peaceful. I'm kind of craving other people. Maybe I'm a little sad. Maybe I'm a little bit depressed in kind of how I'm feeling, kind of down maybe. And so I think those are some of the distinctions. Again, they're not the whole distinction, but I think that's a way we can tell. Right? So, because don't say, well, I spent all this time by myself. If you're generally okay being by yourself and you're not lonely, that's fine. We probably all have heard too. Sometimes there are people that can experience loneliness in a crowd where they're not feeling connections with people. They're not feeling as if anybody's paying any attention to them or that really cares about them, right? So I think all of that kind of fleshes out a little bit of what loneliness is. And, we as men, I think, struggle with loneliness a lot. Within the last year or so, for the first time ever in my life, I am living completely by myself. My kids have all moved out, going off, doing great things. I'm happy for them. I've mentioned in other videos that my wife died due to complications from MS a couple of years ago. And honestly, for the most part, I do okay. I find that in general, I get through my days, I do what I'm doing, and there's no major problems or major concerns or drive, that I'm feeling like there's loneliness. I'm just alone. That's not always. There's definitely times that I feel like being alone, I'm lonely. I wish there were people I would do something with, right? I wish that somebody would call me or pay attention to me in some way. Men are coming across, or at least living life, more lonely than they've ever lived, and which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because there's a lot of people around. I live in a very populated state. There's always people around. And the other thing, we have all these connections with our cell phones and computers and tablets and all these other things. So you would think that with all these connections, we wouldn't be experiencing loneliness. Those cyber connections actually can make it worse for us because we see things on social media. We see other people living life and doing things and going on vacation and having these different events. And that's not our experience. So that makes us feel a little bit more lonely. Some of these cyber connections that are just cyber connections. I'm not talking about your best friend and you that you see often happen to be on Facebook and you're just exchanging things over that platform. I'm talking about pure cyber connection, right? Where it's just, that's all you have. And where we can argue any way we want, and there's no accountability for that. We never have to see the person face to face. Have never experienced, let's take an argument, for example, a cyber argument that's actually done any good. Something on Facebook. Facebook arguments are a waste of time because everybody just spits stuff out. So it's not a real dialogue. It's not a real conversation. And I would argue that it's not really a connection for you. I think the other thing, or one of the other things that makes it more challenging for us as men is our relationships can tend to be superficial, right? How many of you guys will go to a football game or play video games or go out with a bunch of guys? At least in my case, I'd come home and my wife would say, well, so, what's going on with him? I don't know. I didn't ask him. Why? You were with him for 8 hours. How did you not ask him? I don't know. I have no idea, right? We tend to be superficial sometimes in our relationships where we don't go tighter, we don't go deeper, We're happy with keeping things on a surface level, which is fine for a lot of relationships, especially a work relationship, things like that. But we all need those guys we can trust, we can talk to, we can, kind of bare our soul to. I have several people. I have a man who is a really good older brother for me. He's not biologically my older brother, but a really good friend of mine and an older brother. I get together with a men's group at least once a month and talk through things. We all need those connections for people to realize that I'm not alone. I'm not out here all by myself. We have to put a priority on our social life, and we have to work on what it means to have close friendships. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to have 10 close friends. We're probably going to have 1 or 2 close friends, and then we'll have a number of acquaintances or people that we can talk to or get together with. I have one really close friend. I've got other people that are kind of in the next circle out, and then I've got a number of people that are a little further out, but that I can still talk to and I can share with and I can, relate with and have spend some time with. And so I think sometimes we don't put a priority on our social life, not to sacrifice work or some of these other things, but that really a social life, and not just people you go hang with, but to really spend that time with people and invest in their life and have them invest in your life as well. And there's one area people are going to know it's controversial, that's life, but porn. Porn, if you read studies on porn, I'm not even talking religious studies, right? There's a whole side of that, but I'm just talking about social, how it affects men's brains, how we respond to it, all of that. It makes us more isolated. It pulls us into a world that is not real, has us want things that can't possibly be real. Porn is an addiction. It's as addictive as things like cocaine, where our brains get rewired from it. And then that makes us more isolated because what are we doing? We're spending this time just sitting in front of a computer or sitting in front of our phone. We're not relating with anybody else. We're just looking for the next hit. We're just looking for the next video, the next picture, the next whatever. I think there are some things that contribute to loneliness. Again, not just being alone, but to loneliness. One is isolation. My mother-in-law lived on her own for a number of years. My father-in-law died a number of years ago. She was by herself. Her only connection with the outside world, because she couldn't get out, she had a prosthetic leg, was over the phone with people. And honestly, and we saw this with her, the isolation was literally driving her crazy. That's an extreme case. But, if you do studies on people who live in isolation, it messes with you. So we need to be out, whether it's, if there's a group that you play sports with, your church, volunteering to help out. Isolation, though, pure straight isolation day after day is really difficult. And again, the porn thing plays into that as well, because we don't watch porn as a group. We do that in isolation. Another area is lack of accountability. But it's really important that we have other people that we're accountable to, right? We have to be accountable. I'll give you a very simple example, is the bank, right? You run out of money, you're accountable to the bank. We all have areas that we have to be accountable. But even in our own life, we need people that we need accountability to, whether it's a boss, whether it's a coworker, whether it's a good friend, that we can talk things through and kind of discuss our struggles, discuss the victories, and have somebody who's there to check in on us and see where we're at with things. The other one that goes right along with that is vulnerability, right? We as men never want to look like we're weak, never want to look like we don't have it all together. And when you hear the word vulnerability, the wall might go up and go, crap, well, I don't want to be vulnerable. Well, with the right people, we have to be vulnerable. I'm not going to go be in the supermarket and just spill my guts to somebody in the produce aisle. But with the right people in the right place, to be vulnerable so people know the real us, is I think that putting up that wall of who we are not to people creates isolation, creates loneliness, because people don't get to know the real us. I mentioned also choosing always to be alone. We can't always do that. We need other people in our life. Like I said, at least for a vast majority of my life, I've been living with other people, whether it was with my parents and my sisters or with my wife and children. Now my goal is to get out and spend time with people. I'll have breakfasts and dinners with folks. I'll go to different events. I'll make sure I'm involved in my church. And spend that time, because I can't just be watching Netflix every night all by myself. That's fun sometimes, but after a while, the loneliness kicks in. Another area that can be really big and really helpful to combat loneliness is having a mission outside of ourselves, right? I mentioned my church a couple different times. There's areas that I volunteer to help out in the different ministries at church and outside of church, which is great because it pulls me out of myself. There's times maybe I've had a bad day and I go to one of these meetings or go to one of these service opportunities and it kind of wakes me up a little bit. So there's that, which is just the momentary. But then to know that there's something going on in my life that's bigger than me, that I'm doing something more than just doing things for myself, right? I'm doing things for other people. I'm helping out. I'm serving. I'm using my gifts and my abilities for others. That's a real big way. And then once you're with people, you start creating friendships and you start getting to know people. I think another big thing is pride. I only want to do things my way. I only want to, I don't like doing things with other people because they don't do it right or whatever it is. We got to put down the pride. That's part of vulnerability too. There are times I will do things with people. I will go out with people, or I will, spend time with them doing things that I don't particularly, it isn't up my wheelhouse, but I do it because I want to spend time with them, because the hope would be, and there's no guarantee, that then they would spend time with me doing something I want to do. I know that sounds a little selfish. That's not exactly it, but you would hope that then there's a balance in those relationships. But to me, the relationship is more important than I need to do it my way or what I want to do, and this is it, and I put my foot down for that. I think we can be afraid too. I think we can think sometimes, what if somebody knows the real me, right? That's why we make these, we're not vulnerable. We don't open ourselves up because what if somebody gets to know the real me and doesn't like me? Now what do I do? Not everybody's going to like me. And not everybody's going to like me to the same degree, right? So I have a number of people in my life that really like me. And I know as you kind of get outside of those circles, they like me or they understand me, but, not somebody I would want to have dinner with. We're not going to like everybody out there, and nor is everybody going to like us. But I think what we'll find, and I know this firsthand, is when I'm open with the right people and I'm vulnerable with the right people, they do like me. Because they realize that I'm real and that I have my faults and my failings, and that, maybe hopefully I'm fun to hang around too. I would hope. If I'm putting up a wall or putting up a mask, they don't get a chance to know the real me at all. I think we've lost the art of relating. I think that people aren't quite sure sometimes how to have conversations, how to talk, how to ask questions, how to really engage with people. And I think that's another part of it, could be fear in this whole thing, is that, I'm not sure what to do. Well, when I get to be with people, I don't know how to relate. I think people are in fact interested in getting to know me, but they just don't know how to do it. They've never been taught. And I think, and teach people how to have a conversation, how to relate, how to show interest in people's lives. Because then if those aren't skills that you have, you're going to tend to pull in because it's just easier than to try to stumble through very awkward conversations. But that's my encouragement. Stumble through the awkward conversations. Figure out how to do it. There's times I'll have entire conversations with somebody, and my goal is to ask them questions and then respond with more questions based on what they're telling me. I get a chance to really get to know them. It isn't so much for them to even get to know me, but I would like to get to know them. And it's a way of really engaging. And then we get to have some great conversations, and they're things that they're interested in. My wife was bedridden for 5 years. She couldn't leave the bed. But she did a great job of staying in touch with people, being on the phone, inviting people over the best that she could. So, you're going to have to work a little bit harder, or maybe just a little differently, to make connections and to get to know people. There are opportunities out there. If you're into sports, if you're into dancing or concerts or whatever, video games. There's ways to get together. There's conferences all over the place for all kinds of different things that you can wind up going to. Lectures, adult classes, the ones at the college where you can learn how to bake and do all these other things. Take the opportunity to try to find people, to try to connect with people. It's going to be hard to do if you're never really going out and giving it a shot. Better to give it a shot and fail than to not give it a shot. In the comments, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, maybe what I was off base on, or you want to see in a future video. If you can, like and subscribe, I'd appreciate that.